This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, so it is 7:07 PM. Um, yes, I can unofficially call the meeting to order.
You can officially
I can call the meeting to order, but we do not presently have quorum, so that being said, I think I'd like to discuss some of the topics on the agenda and we can um take it from there. So like to welcome those who are present. We have Lord Falter, who's on the board. Thank you for joining us via Zoom. And David Gelman again, ex officio. Former board member and
Former
member
budget chair.
member of community at large, and so we do appreciate your presence as well.
Sure.
And then Ms. Claude
Yes.
as well. Thank you for
Yeah,
being
they-
here. So all right, so looking at the agenda, so we will avoid approval of the minutes from, we will hold that until defer that until the next meeting. Chair report, nothing to report significantly. Obviously, we were based off the last meeting that we had in March. We were able to craft that Padavan letter of support for Mosaic, and that was submitted in a timely fashion for them. And I think in addition, I was able to talk with our vice chair, Mr. Matthews, and so his update was that, let me see exactly what he has to say. Long story short, a lot of nothing has happened. The New York Health Act, there's nothing presently pending with that. And it's unclear if anything is going to transpire before the end of session.
On hold.
It's on hold as now, and there's no, it wasn't listed in the governor's budget as well. And so obviously we keep our eyes out for that if anything should transpire. And so we take it from there. In terms of
New business?
I don't think we're still in his report.
yeah, still,
No, it says there.
yeah, I'm
He's
still,
in his
still in my
Oh,
report.
okay.
So that's essentially where that's done. In terms of moving on to unfinished business, obviously the big things are the fiscal year budget priorities.
I see what-
And so while again this is unofficial, but we can probably start having that conversation and start drafting what we'd like, because again, the deadline for that coming up is May 15th, I believe. And our budget chair is not present right now. But that being said, he's on the committee.
Oh. This doesn't have to be otherwise.
Yeah, no, he just happens to.
He just happens to be on the committee, so. So that being said, we would certainly like to, I think, at least start crafting the ideas of what we would interested in. So, I think what we had discussed the last time was certainly concerns for, specifically harm reduction and, particularly concerns regarding survivors of domestic violence and resources for them directly. So any specific ideas about things that we'd like to have as line items for the budget?
Less than a specific thing, more of a kind of process thing, since we would, with the timing of our meeting, we'll have to kind of have this locked in by next meeting, right?
Correct.
Because
Correct.
they'd have to be ready for the following board meeting.
Absolutely.
And this month being an anomaly, we don't usually meet before the full board.
Right.
I think if we can put something in the minutes and have them released, keep the draft minutes released,
Sure.
saying like people should bring their ideas kind of crafted to the next meeting of like what you want, where you want it to go, the agency and everything else, so we can start slotting them in and prioritizing them. Hopefully with little crafting to do in the meeting, that way we also have something.
Sure.
I would say, based on the presentations that we've had, and the kind of overall sentiment. In addition, like for the harm reduction specifically, I think what we heard a lot was the test strips, you know, but
What is test strip?
so
So-
there exists tests, there's strips that you can test narcotics in to see if they contain
Narcotic.
fentanyl.
Right.
So that if you're,
Mm-hmm,
I mean, again, this is not a popular thing, I'm not endorsing or not endorsing it, if it.
I didn't know what it was.
If your substance is positive for fentanyl, you can decide either not to use or to be more careful with your use so that people are at least informed about
Right.
what they're doing. It's,
Right.
you know, you're less likely to have issues. I would also say hand in hand with that would be Narcan.
Mhm.
I know Narcan kits normally require training, I believe. I think they still want that, even though it's pretty much a nasal spray. Like, remember one of
Yeah,
the syringes?
there's a little instruction, just a little packet about this big.
Yeah, they usually like someone to give a spiel, but I don't think I don't know if it's a requirement. So I would like to put forth that we support that. Again, that's something I personally, not speaking for anybody else, but I think would be a good priority to have. I just don't know if it's something we would have to tie to an agency. Like, I'm not sure how successful, well, maybe, but I think like when I was the youth chair, right, it was hard to come up with budget priorities, I think, too, because it was, but I found that in my experience, and Mr. Galvin, please chime in, because we did this for a very long time. If the more specific it is, the easier it is for them to say yes or no. If it's this kind of abstract thing, it can just kind of linger in the ether. So like, we're asking that there be funding made available for fentanyl test strips and Narcan through Mosaic.
Right.
Right, like something like that, so
Mosaic.
that, I mean, I don't know if that would actually be a good one, I'd have to think about it more. Right, but tying it to what the ask is and which agency we're asking to be the vehicle for it. Is that accurate that they need to be more?
Pretty much, although Mosaic is not an agency, isn't it private? It's not a city agency. is
No,
it?
no, I'm
Okay.
just, yeah, I was just, Mosaic, we've been talking a
Just
lot
long-term
about
plan.
Mosaic.
But long term, I understand.
But
Um,
they have contracts with the city, some of these groups, right?
They may, I'm not sure what Mosaic has.
Right.
Some you may want to consider, we started the emails,
Right.
is NCB, the North Central Bronx Hospital. They might be a resource.
Mhm.
Mm.
Hopefully you and John Doyle will talk soon.
Yes, and I would like to bring that up as a
Okay.
topic of new business,
Okay.
particularly since you're here as well, so.
And the same thing with, I know domestic violence has been a
Right.
priority that this committee has had for several years now. I'm wondering if we could do, like, again, specifically that more. Another domestic violence resource officer be funded for the 50th precinct, like, rather than just say
Right.
domestic
Oh,
violence.
Yeah.
I think that has better luck at being successful. I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes we're just throwing
It's
dots in
very
the
pie in the
dark.
sky, right? And I agree, and I think that, much to your point, that this is gonna be a journey of small steps. And so while I think one of the priorities that has been emphasized, certainly I think Rabbi Kaplan championed this a lot in the prior term, and something that we're trying to focus on now too, is really kind of making a stand and saying something about what is important to us as a committee. And if we are really gonna be, for as long as we are an HR, for as long as we are an independent committee, but if we are gonna do that, like, we don't have to necessarily shoot the home run, right? Like, hit the home run, sometimes you gotta get a single and establish ourselves, right? And if we can establish a foothold and establish a presence and say that this is our precedent, then we can kind of move on to bigger and better things, and so.
It can be useful to substantiate your reason. In other words, due to the 30% increase in fentanyl overdoses
Absolutely.
within the Northwest Bronx, as reported by the 50 precinct,
Ah,
and obviously that's a false
Yeah.
statistic,
Right.
but using that idea, we hereby request.
But we're all about alternative facts in this area.
Only Kelly Conway can, that, she got divorced out of it.
Yeah,
I would also, just for the minutes more than anything else, I think you and I have spoken about this, but for the group is, to remind, we can co-author priorities, and so the New York City Department of Health does consider racial equity to be a health issue.
Mhm.
So if there is something along those lines, we can reach out to like racial equity, which some of the standing committees have a harder time. I don't know if they historically have put in budget requests,
Right.
but we could co-author them, so.
They don't, but I think that she's always looking for causes to support. And so that could be something that her committee could, say that, yeah, we stand up
Who's
with number
that?
3,
Margaret Dell is the chair of the racial equity.
secretary
Oh, racial,
of the
okay.
board.
And the same thing with veterans, right? Like there,
Yeah.
we could talk about veterans' health and veterans' mental health, especially with, you know,
Housing.
well, housing, but also, you know, I'm sure that a lot of our veterans may be triggered, especially our younger vets with current events, right? Like
PTSD, mental health.
PTSD, mental health, you know, relapses, these kinds of stressors
Right.
are very common to cause or lead to either decompensation, relapsing in, you know, not being compliant with whatever your journey is. So just for example, that, you know, those are the things that if people, for the minutes in the room, if people feel like that's something we should put forth, they should reach out to Margaret or Sergio or anyone else to get a feeler out there for our next meeting.
So I think top line items as the things that are concrete that I think we would put down on paper. I would say certainly the directly related to harm reduction, we're gonna say the fentanyl test strips and Narcan. And again, potentially liaise
You
with,
said survivors of domestic violence.
I'm getting to that.
Oh, sorry.
Potentially liaising with, like a committee, like say North Central Bronx, which I believe we'll be having soon. Again, funding for additional domestic violence support officer.
Mhm.
And then I think, and I would also say funding, for resources for, I think with mental health mental health outreach, particularly maybe even looking at Mosaic, as a potential partner.
Outreach for all ages.
All ages. If you have a brain.
Okay.
That you need to keep healthy.
Sometimes people are aiming at kids and teenagers and, you know,
Yeah.
some people,
Right.
but, you know.
But you can certainly, and I think that these are all things that can be drilled down, to at some point in the future in terms of specifics, right?
Mhm.
You know, it's interesting, I was not aware that the strips were for items or products. I thought they were for people, you know, to test.
I mean, there may be some that's true too. My understanding of the ones that I've seen, because the Department of Health does have some,
Right.
is that it's supposed to test the substance.
substance-
I was unaware of that.
You can't visually tell because fentanyl tends to look like a powder or whatever, and it was at
Oh.
one point very intentional that the fentanyl was in there, and now it's every layer is adding a little bit,
Yeah,
and it can be, you know, I think the accepted knowledge is that people are not just gonna throw it out,
Right.
but they can be more intentional with their
Right.
substances use and using less and using in a safe use space of not
Mhm.
using alone,
Right.
so that it still prevents overdose and overdose death.
People who don't know anything is in there who absolutely get it by accident.
Well, that's most of the time. Most
Yeah.
people don't know that there's any in there, let alone how much may be in there, and that's what the strips would
Right.
hopefully help them make better choices or the best choices that they're able to make at that point in their recovery or lack thereof.
Absolutely. Okay. So that's, I think, any other thoughts that come to mind about potential ideas for budget requests? Ms. Clark?
It's not budget, but where we say racial equity, I think we should also include religious discrimination. Or some kind, you know, there's, right now, for example, we have the anti-Semitic situation where because of the things going on overseas, you know, some people are not, they're trying to make life difficult for some Jewish people, whether or not they're on track with whatever's going on or not.
So it would be a matter of drilling that down a little bit to say what exactly are we asking for related to that, right? So like we could just talk about equity, and it's not specific to, you know, it's race, it's gender, it's orientation, it's,
Just
you know,
include that,
religious,
yeah.
all of that, whatever it is.
Yeah, include everybody.
Right, just if someone wants to put forth an equity budget request, it might be worth reaching out to the chair of the equity committee to see what they're seeing, because that's what they focus all of their time on.
And the question is, what would that look like? Because.
Oh, I have
we
no
can't-
idea.
Yeah.
Right, 'cause so we can't necessarily, obviously,
We can't ask for funds for it, but
Well, we-
the idea.
while we would certainly believe that equity is important, right, so we have to talk about it from. It's gonna be critical for us to focus on it from the health and social services perspective of it,
In terms of health, I mean, myself, I get scared to go in certain places. You know, I'm not taking.
Oh, that's
that's just the hand, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how you phrase it to be an ask for funding. So what are, you know, in terms of equity, what are we asking them to fund? Are we asking them to fund
Yeah.
more education in these spaces? Are we asking them to fund more?
Multicultural.
Right, but with that, maybe that's not our committee, maybe that goes to library, education, library and cultural
Okay.
affairs, you know, that's what we kind of.
Right.
We need to think on in between meetings so that when we come, we have a much more specific conversation.
Feel better.
Just putting it out there, as my
Okay.
sister says.
Okay. Any other ideas that come to mind, and obviously if anything in
What
the.
about the preschool stuff? That doesn't involve us? It's
That
an
would probably
education.
be library.
Most likely a
education,
library education, yeah.
I always mess it up and I'm on the committee, that's what's really bad.
Okay.
Elka.
Education, library, culture.
Cultural.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh,
I will remember Elka now.
yes. All right, and I think the other, so. In terms of additional items under unfinished business, as we discussed last, I think. Well, as again, we talked about the New York Health Act, that will obviously just remain a. That's a recursive loop that will just stick here until we actually have something to march on or talk about.
I mean, are you awaiting a document from the senator to opine on, or what? I thought-
So part of the conversation that we had from the last meeting was, this question of how do we go forward, right? Can we make a kind of a generic statement that says, we are in support, do we say that healthcare is a human right and that is somehow the statement? Do we simply say we support this endeavor? And then the concern also being at that moment, if we kind of pin this to what was it, INT?
What?
Introduction?
It's Senate Bill
Yeah.
S 34.
S 3425. If we pointed to S 3425 and then it changes, do we then have to modify what we say and particularly given the timing, I think the thought was, do we wait until it gets reintroduced? And then kind of make a statement regarding the new version of the bill.
Well,
I think it was also is the like turning our presentations into either like resolutions or budget items that we're putting those into action. And then if we're gonna put a resolution, what are we resolving?
Right.
Are we saying that we support this bill and we think everybody else should? Are we saying that we think that this is important, it needs to be given a fair shot, it needs to be brought to the floor? Are we saying like, how far do we want to go as a committee? And I think that's where we got a little kind of back and forth of, how far is too far and how far isn't far enough.
The thing, what they say, the thing is in the eating is in the pudding, the pudding's in the eating, whatever.
Proof of the pudding is in the tasting.
In the tasting, because a health bill can be amorphous. And I gotta do it again, la la la.
And I believe to that point, I believe Laura made some considerable points about the most recent implementation. And I think the question was also concerns about, do we say globally? Are we saying specifically that we support this bill? Because again, that bill is over 30 pages and there's a lot of stuff in it and a lot of stuff that was kind of unresolved. And so the question is are we going to make a statement that basically says we believe in this in principle? Or that we support the specific, or that we support this very specific version?
And I think Steve was gonna do some more,
There was a little
he
more.
was trying to keep track of where it was,
Where
where
in-
it was
right.
going and, in coordination with the senator's
Right.
office.
And so at last, like I said, at last literally, like I said, based on that email from today, at last check, it's not on the governor's budget list, and there's no evidence at this moment that's been reintroduced at this point in time. So
But a question, the things that we're doing right now are related to state and budget. So if it's city and not budget, it doesn't count.
Well, no, so we made a statement, we talked about our budget priorities, and then we moved on to additional items that are unfinished business.
Oh,
So that's,
unfinished business.
so
Okay.
Agenda.
in the agenda, right, so that's what we're discussing now.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's been 2 months since the senator came here.
Correct.
Okay, and this is very important to him. He's been pushing this for several years, and this is the only bill that will be there in this calendar year. So, I think it might be worthwhile to come up with a statement that this committee, the board, Community Board 8, and rolling on to Community Board 8, for them to, as a whole, to vote on it, believes in X, Y, and Z. And that, all constituents deserve to have access to proper healthcare. I'm always uncomfortable with the term human right, because to me, that's life, liberty, free speech, freedom of religion.
Mhm.
But I think that's language that's not necessary as a human right, but that we believe in
Access.
I'm sorry,
Access.
access to quality healthcare in a financially viable way.
Within budget constraints.
But
I think the budget's a slightly different issue.
Yeah,
For
the
this
budget-
top, for this
right,
conversation.
for
No.
this, for a resolution, that we support in principle, and that S 3924, whatever it is, appears to be in concert
In
with
line
this,
with-
but in line
In keeping
with
with-
this principle, and therefore, we support it as it is now.
Mhm.
You gotta be careful about the term support, because as a community board, we're
Exactly,
really not allowed to lobby.
right,
Mhm.
and that was part of the challenge that we had, is this element of, again, where does it fit, because again, at the time, it's as it's being introduced, the thinking is we can throw our support and say this is what that. But obviously, once it then gets to something that's
Right.
being voted on, it's an entirely different.
So I would do it sooner or later, because the April 1st budget will be done by the 15th or the 30th, somewhere around there.
Right.
But then they'll get down to legislation business for the following 2 months.
Can we
And
think,
so you really should have, if you want to do anything, you should have something in support of it by next month,
can we say
complete.
the ideas and principles we support? In other words,
I think where we get stuck is I think we all can agree like this, we think this is a good idea, but
Yes.
the therefore be it resolved clause is where we get stuck. It's like, are we saying we support the spirit of this bill? Are we saying we support the discussion of this bill? Or like, what are we?
consideration.
Well, I mean, but they're very different things.
Well, his idea of that this is in line with these whereas clauses,
Mhm.
okay, and encourage the legislature to open floor debates, say.
And move forward on something.
Consider.
Yeah,
Evaluate, consider. Yeah.
well, to actually bring it to
Bring
the
it to the
floor.
floor,
right,
bring it to the floor for discussion.
Yeah.
And so,
That way we don't say we're in favor.
And then that way, yeah, you're not really committing to a bill.
right, you're committing to the principles that this bill.
And that it should be discussed by our legislators.
Yeah, that's a good
And I
idea.
think in line with that, I think one of the things that was discussed at our last meeting was potentially, since Senator Rivera and Representative Benowitz both support it, is whether we could have something as a separate forum for the community, just for them to talk about.
Hold
it.
a forum.
And
Would that be in lieu of or in addition to?
well, I think in addition to, because I think part of
I just
the,
wanna
I think one of the things that we discussed was the fact that. And as we, mentioned, many of us were in fact involved in healthcare and had no clue that this thing
I know.
existed up until,
I know.
he came and spoke about it. And then not only to hear that this has been something that's been, but again, and I think thinking about, when you think about the community, how much the community at whole may not even be aware that this thing exists or is.
Mhm.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Okay, I don't wanna say I'm against it, but what happens is the unions, such what I work in, and we will have our healthcare plans, and whatever the program that he's promulgating could possibly reduce the efficacy or the ability of our programs that we have now, such as the possibility of selecting our own doctors and things. Could I just say an example? I had heart surgery in Montefiore. I felt very, very bad about the way I was treated. I have a doctor out at Long Island Jewish, and I'm transferring to go over there because my healthcare program through my union allows me to do that.
And so that is, I mean, so your concerns have been certainly raised, and I think it's come up, and I do believe that Senator Rivera did discuss some of that before. And that being said, yes, this specific bill has, as has been discussed, there is a lot of conversation with it, and as a matter of fact, Laura, we'll have you talk in a second, but
I just want
these are topics that
you
no,
to hear that.
these are all known. And that being said,
My heart is concerned.
one of the things that do come up as concerns are the fact that this is not perfect, and it is going to be an iterative process, but
And that would be part of a lobbying effort on the part of the union.
yes.
Well, we are lobbying.
No, I know, so,
We
Yeah,
are.
but that doesn't discount the
Nope.
ability of the community board to.
Yeah, but
to
in terms of the community.
Go ahead, Laura.
Hi, just because Merritt brought up the union issue, I'm a retired UFT. I know the
Yes.
UFT opposes the New York Health Act, along with many other public unions. Another union, well, not a union, but you may be familiar with the New York City Organization of Public Service Retirees.
Retirees,
Okay.
1096.
This organization has been fighting with New York City and has 3 lawsuits, which we are winning so
Okay.
far, to keep our traditional Medicare. And they are opposed to the New York
Right.
Health Act. I have to say, the devil's in the details. And what
Absolutely.
I'd like to send you is a link for something that was put out by the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity. It was published March 31st, 26, and it's entitled How New York's Single-Payer Health Care Bill Affects the Working Poor. It's about taxes, has a lot of answers or responses to the RAND report. And it's a very thoughtful, nonpartisan group. And I'll send that to you because we don't have time here perhaps tonight to discuss
Sure.
costs and the issues
Right.
that it brings up. But there are many serious concerns. And what I had pointed out the last time was that while maybe several states have considered it, no state has the single payer taxpayer. No state has implemented, with the exception of Vermont, Bernie Sanders' state, which implemented it in 2011, and then 3 years later discontinued it because it was not feasible. So at this instance, New York would be the first. And that gives me pause being the first, because there are so many unanswered questions on how you handle 1/5 of the state's economy, which is the medical. So I think that's why it's balled up and not ready to go yet. It's founded on something very, everyone wants good healthcare. Everyone wants to see improved healthcare. Everyone, that's not it. It's the nuts and bolts of this bill, which I have read and which have, raised a lot of issues. So I'm sure it will be reintroduced next year. And, if it ends up as it has in the past few years, not moving forward. And so there will be continued discussion about it.
But that's reason why it should be brought to the floor to discuss, rather than just being in just lobbying.
But I agree, and I think certainly one of our responsibilities is to advise and consent, and that being said, I think I think this is certainly a wonderful opportunity that we can, I think, take some of these ideas, put them on paper, and then when I think it'd be a great opportunity to reconvene. Appropriately armed with not only our feelings and concerns, but so we can bring this up, right? Because again, I'm not saying that we're necessarily supporting this specific act, we're supporting the principle behind it. And that being said, well, let me phrase that. I believe we support the principle behind it, but as you stated, the devil's in the details, and so we're not going to get a quality product until we actually talk about those things, and so
You may, you may want to have your vice chair draft a resolution to discuss and to distribute the week before and discuss at next month's
Right.
meeting.
right.
I'd like to say that for the city of New York, we have a bill called 1096. Now, that was last year's number, but the same city councilman who promulgated that last year has submitted the RIC, and it hasn't been assigned a new number yet. So Mary Ann Pizziola, who's the head of the organization, and she holds weekly meetings on the internet in those various formats, all of them, the Instagram, the this, the that, and discussing about this because especially also the people who are under the World Trade Tower medical thing, that complicates other aspects of this situation. And there are a number of people within the city or formerly worked in the city because she lives in Georgia now. But there are people who are involved in that and have suffered greatly with that.
But that said, yes, so I mean, all these things are considered, right, and that it's valid concerns, and so, like I said, we're not necessarily saying we support a specific item, but again, I think we could, these are all things that we can talk about and make sure that are available, not only to be discussed as a resolution, but also to be presented when we do speak with them again.
Can I address that?
May I just say something? I'm sorry, I don't know if it's showing. It's Laura.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Just in line with what Merritt was saying, Mary Ann Pizzacola had a meeting with Senator Rivera, has had ongoing. And while there were certain changes in his bill, it was not nearly enough. And that's why maybe in the future there'll be more changes. But that's why this organization, which this board has passed resolutions in the past to support the goals of the New York City Organization of Public Service Retirees under promises made, promises kept on our health care. And this was last year or even 2 years ago. So we have some history with that organization. But I just wanted to share that I know that they're very aware of this and watching it. Everybody is watching it and everybody is trying to fix it, but it's not fixed yet.
Okay. If you could send her information as well, and like I said, we can. That's something certainly
Yes,
to consider.
I will send you. I will. I should have done that
Thank
already.
you.
Thank you. So I've just been researching as to, why are they against it? Why?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
I'd like to propose that we talk about a resolution next month. And please, for the record, Steve, if you're watching this, I'm happy to help you with a
Right.
resolution. I know it's a newer thing. I've done like 2 in my time, but I'm happy to help.
Okay.
And then I propose that maybe our either June or June meeting might be a good time to have a kind of open forum community meeting if the senator and the council person are available. Also because June meetings are rough to begin with. It's hard to
Right.
continue momentum into the next, because we break for the summer. It might be a good time to kind of just meet and share ideas. Folks can come with their concerns and see if there are answers or if there are things they're working on or what have you. Because I think everyone has a concern based on where they are.
Absolutely.
But I know that I can't answer it.
Again,
I tried to read it. I really did. I swear. But all that stuff makes the language makes my eyes cross. It just so having the folks who can better engage in a discussion here to actually engage in the
Right.
discussion.
and it's going to be a process, and like I said, I appreciate everyone being present who can actually, again, we can. I feel like we have a real opportunity to craft something that is strong and kind of gets the voice of at least this board in this region into play, right? In that whether that fact including factoring in all the legitimate concerns, right? We're not going to sugarcoat this or kind of put things under the rug. We want to make sure that all the legitimate concerns are held so that we can ultimately whatever comes out, if it comes out while we're still alive, is the best that we can, or at least is at least an excellent first start. Put it that way. Any other topic, any discussion? I mean, otherwise, I think that being said, we're not gonna have, I'll get that data from you later, certainly. We're not gonna continue. I think the appropriate times we'll start coming with a skeleton, a framework of this. And we'll start implementing some of the ideas that have been, have been mentioned and obviously any of the other points. Keeping in mind that, again, we're not gonna have a final draft of this, but at least we'll start getting the skeleton of this together. Anything else pending in that regard? Or that really stands out? Okay. I would like to move on to new business. And so I think one of the topics that's not officially on the agenda, but has been briefly discussed, I think Mr. Gilman reached out to me, is there's some representatives from, I think, North Central Bronx. And the idea being that one of the concerns certainly that we have is that we do not have a hospital per se in this area. However, there are a number of health facilities that do abut this region that people may ultimately even be seeking care from. And so there was discussions about starting to communicate and liaise with those hospitals, and if you could just give us a little taste of things to come.
Okay, well, for those who don't know, North Central Bronx is physically adjacent to Montefiore Hospital, immediately east of Jerome Avenue and the L there. So it's right on the edge of this district. It is one of three New York City Health and Hospitals, public hospitals, along with Jacobi and Lincoln. And they basically want to, since we are part of their so-called catchment, their population area where they draw patients from typically, they want to do more and more and more outreach to, frankly, let residents, our CD8 residents know it exists, that it's available to them, and some of the services and specialties, cardio and pulmonary, and I mean there's a ton of, I mean it's a full service hospital with an ER. So I am on their community advisory board. I was appointed this year. And so I am encouraging them to go out into the community, particularly ours, because we are literally on the border from them. And hoping to, connect their community affairs person with Dr. To see topics you'd like to hear discussed, topics they'd like to present to the community, and when and how to do that, and maybe getting them involved, maybe having them show up to street fairs and other events that we're involved with. Oh, I could see that light bulb on top of your head.
I feel like somebody's having one soon, but I can't quite get there.
Well, there's Bronx Week in 2 weeks, Marshall Parkway, which they probably will do. I hope an hospital.
Yeah, it's great. So they're gonna be happening all over the place. For some reason, I was like, isn't there one? And then my brain wouldn't.
And then one in May, there's the North Riverdale Alliance one. There are a couple, and yeah, I want them to get
There's
in front of
also
people.
the Amalgamated has a bazaar every year for their nursery school. It's a fundraiser, but they usually have tables and stuff for people to.
News to me. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just about walking distance from the hospital.
Yeah, I went to those Amalgamated nursery schools, so and I live in the Amalgamated, so.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's usually May. That's coming up ish. I don't know if they've gotten there.
I've not heard of that one. So that would be another way to do it. Another outlet, excuse me.
All right. Any other topics pressing other than the fact that the world's on fire?
It's not funny.
Well, in theory, it's dampened a bit, in theory.
In theory.
It's dampened a lot of
We
people.
didn't start the fire in my head. Thank you so much.
All right, so that being said,
Actually, we did, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't do anything.
Courtesy of somebody.
Stalling public government.
Courtesy of a certain person.
The orange, the man in orange.
Yes.
All right,
And
so.
you've got an orange hat almost, be careful.
That's right,
Right,
it's quite red.
yes.
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
So that being
both
said,
colors are red.
we have upcoming meetings, so this is the April meeting, so we next scheduled meeting will be May 13th. Following that was June 10th.
Wait a minute, slowly.
It's on the bottom.
It's on the bottom of the agenda.
It's down here? Where? Oh, yes, there it is. Okay.
And with that, those are two, barring anything crazy by way of major holidays or events. And so we will target those. And
Maybe there'll be some fairs in that time that we could bring some materials or something. Do we have materials to distribute of any
The
kind?
board office
The
just,
board office
when there's a
released-
request for us to be there, they ask for volunteers to table and they bring
yes,
things, so.
they have events there. So, and I think if you
Definitely.
if you check, I think the Facebook page, I think they have it. I think they just announced they
To
were.
Facebook. I'm
They-
sorry.
They just announced it.
Mailing list.
The mailing
not
list. The mailing list is
Yeah,
available.
the the people I just mentioned, they do Facebook, they go get whatever.
It's also, on the website, I think they usually show what's going on.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do the website.
Yeah, it should be on there.
I do the website, I do.
The harm reduction thing, did you want to discuss that?
Well, I think right now, I think the last check there was, so we specifically about harm reduction, I think we're funding.
Another number.
But I think they were still in.
They haven't resubmitted it.
they
yet.
haven't-
Okay.
That's
So
what,
they're still.
we're stalled on that.
Oh, is that the one you referred to? Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so
My mistake.
yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There are two things. So obviously the Senate bill and then the harm reduction is still in the ether. But that said, I think we did talk specifically about doing support for harm reduction in terms of at least budget priorities. The question is, this is a case where we simply, in line with that, if we are gonna talk about that, if we do make an official doubling back on that.
Mhm.
If we do make an official resolution just as a means of supporting our budget priorities, to say that,
My instinct is like, again, where I get stuck on resolutions is what is the therefore be it resolved? And in terms of like, if the resolution to support our budget priorities, I'm not sure how that would work. Therefore be it resolved, we think, I mean, I gotta be very facetious, therefore be it resolved, this is a good thing and everybody should love it. Which is, harm reduction is a hard pill to swallow. A lot of people feel. It's basically anything that prevents or lessens the likelihood of harm,
Oh,
whether it's
okay.
an overdose
Any-
or, yeah.
But a resolution should be focused on policy
on a policy, right?
as opposed to like a budget item. I think it's a good one. And given how June tends to get jammed. Because then the
graduation.
year and just the board meeting, nominations, et cetera. Strongly encourage you to get these two resolutions done by month end to the committee members. So, and have people get back to you before the May meeting.
Right.
Of this committee, so that at the May meeting, you can vote on those resolutions.
Sure.
No, but we won't, our May meeting happens after the full board meeting. And
That's okay,
yeah, we
actually-
still have to put them forth in June, but we could probably.
but they should be resolved by the end of the May meeting.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Agree. Okay.
Resolve the resolutions.
We've got one out already, so we're good. Progress. But yeah, I think. Again, I think in principle, like I said, while we're not necessarily saying it to say we do this. To support our budget items, I think it would make a strong statement that if we say that I think the budget items is also saying we're putting our money where our mouth is. To a certain extent.
Yeah, for me, the resolution is like, who are we supporting, there needs to be a kind of. Again, if North Central was like, we want to do this, it's like we support, whereas harm reduction reduces the likelihood of an overdose by this much, whereas. You know, harm reduction is not available, and it's not known, where therefore be it resolved that we as a board support Bronx, even North Central Bronx antibody.
Expansion of,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of making things up off the top of my head,
Addressing
my
that.
mind is a terrifying place.
Yes.
But you know, that's the kind of,
it's good.
We can get started on those two.
yeah, we
Um,
just have to, kind of, for me, I'm like,
got something come, yeah, I get it.
I need parameters. Don't let me
Alright.
have,
So,
don't let me just go.
all right, so that being said, I think we've discussed everything else. I think we're, like I said, next meeting will be coming up in May and following in June. Our priorities will be, again, honing down our specific budget priorities. And then also, I think drafting at least some, drafting resolutions for the two topics, something regarding healthcare as well as harm reduction. And I think we will also be focusing on getting that representative from North Central Bronx here. And then also focus on seeing if we can have another open forum with regarding elements of that New York Health Act in the near future.
They should,
So-
they should say what North Central Bronx its capacity is and what.
Yeah, they will certainly, all those things will be addressed.
Mhm.
I'm sure.
That's a conversation that the two of them will
Yeah,
have.
yeah, great.
Okay.
Just, it's on my head because I think it's supposed to be in, I didn't know who was gonna do it.
So that being said, I guess we can unofficially adjourn, since
We don't have an official.
we don't have a meeting, so just a really pleasant conversation.
No, you can officially adjourn, you just can't vote on anything.
We're, yes, we're,
You officially open the meeting at 7 and.
yes, meeting is adjourned, so thank you,
7:54.
and we will see you again next month. Lord willing, when the creek don't rise.
Amen.
Had a lot this weekend because the paper, like it was present.
All right, thank you, everyone, have a pleasant evening.